Hello and welcome to our special edition of the So What box and how to make a stuffed animal kitten. First things first, we're going to need this paper that came with your kit as well as the little oval piece. You're also going to need a piece of printer paper and a pen for this project. First, let's lay our printer paper down and open up our oval. We're going to iron this flat, and you can just use a normal cotton setting for this. Once we get all the wrinkles out of this oval piece, we are going to iron on the piece of paper that came with your kit. You'll notice that one side is shiny and one side is not. You want the shiny side down on this. And make sure that you're on a piece of paper because this is glue and we don't want to get glue on your ironing board. You're going to want to make sure that that gets real ironed and real hot, so iron it quite a bit for a long time until it gets hot, and then take your pair of scissors and just cut around the oval like so. Once you've got that all cut out, you can take that printer paper off the backside pretty easily. And then we're going to peel the paper part of this glue thing off the back as well. See the shiny glue stuck on there? Now we're going to take our large pieces, which are actually kind of cat-shaped, and go ahead and iron those out as well. Get all the wrinkles out. Once you get both of them ironed, you're going to want to choose one that's going to be the front of the cat, and we're just going to lay it down like this. See, this top part is the face and the ears. And then we're going to lay this circle around in the center here and just iron over the top quite a bit to get this glue to stick and stick those pieces together. That's going to be the main face of our kitten. Once we've got that done, we are going to need to sew on some buttons. So take your needle and some thread, and we're going to go ahead and put that through there and tie some knots. Once you get a couple knots tied, you're going to choose where you want your button eyes to go. I've laid mine out and I know that this is where I want one of my eyes to go, so I'm going to come up from the back side so that that knot is hidden. Once you pull that string all the way through, go up and down through those holes for your eyes, and then flip over and come back up in the same spot through a hole in the button and then back down. You're going to want to do this a couple times just to make sure that everything is sewed down pretty tight. When you've gotten it enough to where you're okay and think that it's on there tight, come out the side of the button as you come up the last time. See how that thread does not go through one of those buttonholes? Then you're just going to loop it around like I'm showing you here, and then go through that loop and pull it tight. That is going to make a knot. So here I'll show you one more time. Catch that side under the button and come through with your needle through this little loop and pull it tight for a knot. Go ahead and rewatch that if you need to. Once you've gotten 2 knots, you can cut that thread right next to the button and nobody will see it. Now we're going to do the same exact process with the other eyeball. Once you're done with that, we're going to need to sew on a nose. So we're gonna come up where I think that I want my nose, and basically we're going to make a triangle shape with some big long stitches. Now I'm going to come along the top and just fill this in by going close to each stitch along this top line of the triangle. And look, each time that I do this, I come out at the bottom point of that triangle to make a nose triangle shape. We're pretty much just coloring with thread. Now I'm going to do one more stitch across the top of the nose, and there's our little triangle nose. Next we're going to make a little bit of a mouth, so I'm going to do a big stitch that comes right straight down from the nose and then side to side. Once you get that done, go ahead and tie a knot in the back of your piece of fabric. Once you've tied that knot, we are going to leave this face side up and take your other piece of fabric and line it up so that the cat shapes match each other. Once you get all these edges lined up real good, we're gonna start pinning all the way around. I am putting pins pretty close to each other because these curves are going to be kind of hard. They won't be super bad, but make sure that you've got a lot of pins, and that will make it a ton easier. Now's when our pen comes in handy. When we start sewing, we are going to sew along the edge with the edge of our presser foot against the edge of the fabric. But what's going to happen is right here in these corners, if we follow along, we're going to end up with a deeper corner. See that? That's how we're going to get the tail shape. So I want you to go around and see how I'm making these deeper corners. That's going to help us give the shape of the kitten. So go ahead and do that. And those lines are going to be lines that we follow when we start sewing. In between my fingers here, we're going to need to leave an opening so that we can turn the kitten right side out. So go ahead and put 2 backwards pins in about 3 finger widths or 4 apart, and we are not going to sew in between the backwards pins. We'll go all the way around, but leave a hole between the backwards pins. Alright, so here we're going to start at our sewing machine, and we're going to start with the right side of the presser foot against the right side of the edge of our kitten and at the end of our backwards pins. Go forward a few stitches and then reverse stitch. You're going to get to a corner, and once you get to each corner, you're going to make sure your needle is down, pick up the presser foot, and then pivot. As you go around these curves, if you are unable to steer fast enough, which you can see that I am unable to do right here, we can do little tiny mini pivots. So you're going to stop, put down your needle, pick up your presser foot, and just pivot the fabric around that needle just a tiny bit as you go along. Pivots are going to be your friend with this project. Once we get back to the second backwards pin, go ahead and back up and then cut your threads. See how we followed those lines that we drew as we sewed? Now on each of these parts that go in, go ahead and make a little tiny slit, but make sure that you don't go across the thread. Then turn your kitten inside out through the hole that we left, and use a finger or a pencil to make sure that you get every single little round area pressed out as far as it will go. Once you get that all pulled and taken care of, we are going to go to the ironing board, and we're going to iron everything around here super flat. See how I'm pulling out the edges along my seams as I go? We're going to go around until we get to this hole, and then we have some fancy ironing that we're going to do. So you're going to take and iron under about 1/2 of an inch, which is about as wide as your thumb. Now you want to follow along with the curve here because this is part of the kitten's leg. So just try to curve that around. See here, you can see that I just kind of folded it as I ironed. Now that I've got that bottom one folded under in a curve shape, I'm going to fold under the top part and try to match it with the fold on the bottom as close as I can, and then I'm just going to iron that down and get a crease as well. There we go. Now it actually looks like a round part of a kitten leg. Now we're going to go ahead and take your stuffing and start putting it in the kitten. You're going to want to start with little tiny pieces pushed up into the ears and the legs and tail. Once you get those done, you can go ahead and put big pieces inside of the body of the kitten and just jiggle it all around so that it looks pretty normal. Don't forget to get a bunch of stuffing in the area closest to that little leg where we have the hole opening. Once we've got all of this stuffing done, we're going to need our hand sewing needle again because we're going to stitch this up. I'm using a red thread here so that you can see where I'm going. First, you want to come over towards the edge on the edge of the hole and come up towards the stitching line. Then we're going to follow the ironed lines that we just made through this hole. And basically you are going to be stitching along the fold line. So down the fold and then up the fold line. Down the fold and up the fold line. And see how we're staying an equal distance apart as we go? This is going to be important so that it doesn't pucker. Once you get a certain length, you can go ahead and tug on that. If you tug too tight, it puckers a little, and you can just undo it by smoothing those puckers out. Let's continue sewing on these fold lines as we go down the length of the hole that we left. Once you get to the end of this hole, you're going to want to make sure that you sew all the way to the end, and then we need to tie a knot, and you're going to do that by just putting your needle through a tiny bit of the fabric and leaving a little loop. Then you're going to put the needle through the loop. I like to go twice just to make sure, and pull that tight. Now to hide the tail of this thread, we're just going to shove this needle in right next to the knot and come out anywhere in the body of your stuffed animal. When you cut it out, it just sucks right back in. And there you go. You've got a nice, fun stuffed animal. Congratulations and good job. I hope you had fun.